That was my alarm. You guys get to see me checking my alarm. So we have a new intro system that I wrote down here, so which I don't have in front of me. So, hey, potty people. Chiclones needs more introductions, so potty people is what we're going to go with for now. That's potty with a D. And big smile, big energy. All right, hey, potty people. Thanks so much for coming. Tonight we have a great guest. We're going to talk to Joe Wilson, who you may know from a couple different places. Like probably the most famous place he's been is this show. The last time he was here, probably not. He's also on the Bees in Your Backyard. I think that's the link. I have the link in the description. I'm pretty sure it's beesinyourbackyard.com. He's got a children's book that he wrote, and I don't know who illustrated it, but it's pretty great. It's pretty great information about bees. I learned something from the book. So that's good. And I want to thank everybody for your support. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. I'm not expecting a big audience to start with because we're a little bit early, but people might still be eating dinner or something. But anyway, you can watch it later. That's fine. We'll be here. Joe doesn't care. Speaking of Joe, let's bring him on. Joe,
Hey,
welcome back.
thank you.
It's actually Joe, guys. No Russ. Russ was not involved in this episode whatsoever. I am going to need my glasses. I'm going to have to go back to my glasses, Joe, because
Nothing wrong with
I have actual
glasses.
questions. Well, I don't usually wear them because the glare is bad, and I can't hardly see anyway unless I do the bifocal. So if I'm reading comments, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's good. So it's something, you know. Do you do podcasts at all, or usually?
No, not. I
Or you
keep
stuck
thinking
in?
about doing it, but I've never started. So no.
It's a slippery slope. I would just stick to your shorts and your informational videos. That's my advice. You have the personality for it. It's a lot. It's a lot,
Yeah, it looks like a lot of work. So I'll let people like you do it. You
right?
set it up, and I'll just
Um,
come and talk.
yeah, as long as you have fun. That's good. That's good. Let's see. Your illustrated book, what was it called again? I
The
have it
kids
and I
book.
forgot. Yeah,
Yeah, it's called Bees Are the Best,
that's it.
and we just self-published it. So you have to just find it through our website, which you already gave at beesinyourbackyard.com.
There's a link in the description. I don't do that a whole lot. Usually I'm really bad about it, but I try to get it all in there for you because there's so much
I'm gonna grab it so
there.
you
It's
can
a
see
great
it.
website.
That's what it looks like.
Nice. I would have that by who illustrated that, by the way?
So it's a friend of mine named Johnny Van Orman. He's
Okay.
primarily like a cartoonist. So he does
Okay.
work, freelance guy. He does work on basically all of the cartoon channels, Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, all that stuff. And he's been a friend of mine since college. And so I talked with him about it once and convinced him to do it a couple years ago. So super cool animation. I mean, super cool illustration. And then at the back, I got to show you the back, this little advertisement for the book. So we have the real
Yep.
pictures of the bees with the little characters. Let's see if we can, the character that's in the book, and then the real
Yep.
one with some fun facts.
That's my favorite part. That's my daughter and I
Thank you.
have like 50 kids' books about bugs.
Nice.
And yeah, she knows that. She figured it out now that Daddy will sit down with the bug books at any
Smart.
point. I'll do anything to sit down with the bug books. So she's slowly getting into it. Tonight we're going to talk with Joe. We still don't have anybody. It'll be 8:30. People will pour in and be like, "Sorry, I'm late." Blah blah blah. I didn't remember. But tonight we're going to talk about, or ask you on to talk about. Last time we talked about native bees, and to be honest, I never really noticed them before that episode. I didn't pay enough attention. And we have some beautiful ones here in Illinois.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have this little metallic, like teal, like blue green. That's probably my favorite, just because they're beautiful. You don't see them very often.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of little small, like I think we call them sweat bees.
Yep.
So yeah, they can be a little annoying, but they're not. My family thinks that they bite you like a biting fly, and they absolutely don't.
They
So,
can sting you, and sometimes they will, but it's fairly mild.
well, they'll just sting you out of like just cause.
Well, so they're called sweat bees because often when we're out working in the yard or something, they actually land on our skin to drink sweat, probably for
Right.
the salts or something like that. But when they're landing on you, sometimes if you're gardening, so I'm going to move my arm up here. Like let's say they land right where's my camera? If they land right here and you're gardening, you might pinch them in your, what I call my elbow pit. Anyway, then that will think that they're going to think they're threatened and they'll sting you. Or sometimes they'll crawl down your collar and they'll get stuck in there and sting you. It's a little bit worse than a mosquito bite, but not as bad as a honeybee sting or like a wasp sting. It's fairly mild.
Okay, it doesn't stick around. Like the honeybee initially, I don't have a problem with like the initial sting, but it's the fact that it just keeps pumping that venom into you that is like, okay, please stop. Thank you.
Yeah. Not pleasant.
And then wasps. Yeah, no, wasps. I'm just on the cusp of liking wasps. I tolerate them now. So
that's good. They're cool.
I know they serve a purpose. I tolerate them now, unless we found a nest just inside the kitchen somehow, and so that had to go. But I don't know how we got a nest and never noticed a wasp. But yeah, it was just above the fridge. It was the weirdest thing. They had to go. I apologize.
I often tell people wasps are great for your yard because they're pest control. They kill the pest insects, but I don't like them to nest in my yard. Certain kinds I don't like to nest in my yard because they can be aggressive, and I don't want to have to fight for space in my yard,
Exactly. There's plenty of other space. We're setting up a lot of so this week, this episode, I asked you on to talk about basically how to support those native pollinators. Not specifically necessarily bees, but I know you do more than bees. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the benefits of that, kind of touch on how to do that yourself, maybe come up with some resources on where you can source plants. So specifically like native gardening or more native plant gardening, and possibly getting rid of some of your lawn.
Yeah. It's always good.
Yeah, like we did that. Somehow we got conned into doing that here in America, and it's just our life is lawn, and it's not the best. It's a lot of upkeep.
It's a lot of upkeep. Not great for the environment. Not great for our Saturday mornings having to cut it.
Yeah, it doesn't do a whole lot. That's why I let mine every 6 weeks. I cut it. My neighbors hate me. So it's turning into a dandelion farm, which I'm okay with. So now I know to start off, I know that this is something that came up for me that I don't know where my questions went now. That's sad. So I didn't know that there were zones. I just thought it was like, oh, I'm in Illinois, I can look for this plant. But you want to really be careful of the zones that you're in, because I know you're in Utah. Utah's a big state. Illinois has 3 or 4 different zones that they have. We go pretty far south. It's a pretty tall state. So we have different, weather patterns, I guess. So I had to figure that out. And then you're looking at, I guess they're pretty hardy, right? Is that one of the benefits of native plants?
Well, there's a couple benefits. The native plants have lived, and when we say native, it's confusing sometimes to people because there are plants that are native broadly to North America. They are from North America, but not every plant that's native to Illinois, for example, would grow in Utah, and vice versa. And so even in Utah, there's a native plant in southern Utah that won't grow up here by Salt Lake City where I live. So native is a plant that naturally grows in that area. The benefit of it is, one, it's adapted to that area. So if you're in Illinois, it's adapted to the freezing cold winters and the hot, humid summers. So you don't have to baby it as much. If you're native to Utah, it's adapted to the dry, cold winters and the dry, hot summers. And so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to water it as much and take care of it as much. It's resistant to diseases that are also native, that the non-native plants are often more susceptible to. But also, as far as bees go, native bees have evolved with native plants, and they usually have a really close relationship. So there are some native bees that are really picky about the plants that they visit, and there are some native bees that are not picky. But so the native flowers are going to be good for your yard, good for your landscaping bills, good for the native bees, and good for the other native organisms, good for butterflies and birds and other things like that.
Yeah, it's a big thing for me. I love native birds that are in my area. Hey, Luch. There's one. We got one. Okay, one early riser. We have a garter snake population that I know this is near and dear to Russ's heart, but we have a native garter snake population in our neighborhood that is staggering. Like, like people see them daily. At one
That's
point,
cool.
we had bushes in the front yard, and I found 7 at once, stunning in the front yard when I went out to take my daughter to school.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's one. Wait, there's one, and I just picked one up out of the bush. They were still a little cold, I think, and it just was very calm and relaxed, and it was a juvenile. And so I put him back, and then my daughter was like, okay, I want to pet it now. And I was like, so I just picked it back up. It just never moved. It just let me pick it right back up.
Wow.
And I've never had that experience with a snake.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the resistance to keeping it was very strong. Like I wanted to just be like, well, this obviously the snake wants to live in my home.
Yeah. He wants to be my pet.
I didn't do that. I'm not a snake guy. Um, not that I don't, they're fine. I don't dislike them, but I like them outside doing their job. Um, but that's something I want to do too. I want to promote that for them, for the garter snakes specifically. And the native bees are like number 2, hummingbirds, butterflies. We don't really get monarchs here, I guess occasionally, but it's not really a thing. But we're going to be doing milkweed. Milkweed's kind of a
Maybe you'll get
general.
monarchs then.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. I like them. So,
Well, and really, if we can, like you said, lawn isn't really the greatest thing for yards, but if we can plant more native in our yard, native shrubs and native trees and native flowers and all that, we actually make our yard into part of the ecosystem rather than being separate from the ecosystem. So it's functional in so many different ways.
yeah, that's super solid. Yes, I like that. I like that. I like the fact that it's easier, less watering, less maintenance. I plan on replacing some of my yard with clover, like flowering clover, which isn't native, but it's going to offer to the pollinators. Like bumblebees are a big deal to me. So they love all that stuff and dandelions and the whole deal. So, and we have a good population of bumblebees as well. Do you have advice for sourcing? Do you know of a spot where you could really
Find
source
native plants?
Well, like online or I know it's kind of illegal to just go dig some up somewhere.
So I've never even looked up those laws about what you can and can't dig up, but I know that there's lots of, so it's hard to say a source because generally I tell people to go to local garden shops. More and more local nurseries are stocking some native flowers. Even like our local Home Depot will have some native-ish flowers. I say native-ish because they're like, maybe they're native to the Western United States, right?
Oh, wow.
So broadly native, which is still better than nothing. But yeah, I think you can even search for native plants nursery on Google and you'll find some stuff in your area. There's just lots of them around. And in fact, it's just there's a growing realization that it's important. So nurseries are starting to carry more of that. There's an interesting study that I should mention that said, so as a bee biologist, I almost always suggest native plants. Native plants are number 1 for native bees because they know each other. But there's a study that says if you plant a mixture of native plants and non-native plants, you can actually have a more vibrant garden that can support more pollinators. Because, like, for example, in Utah, and I'll mention Utah a lot because that's where I'm at currently, but in July, there's not a lot of native flowers blooming in July. It's like the dry portion between the spring flowers and then the late summer, we get late summer, like thunderstorms, we get different flowers, but July, there's almost nothing. And so if we were only going to do native flowers, July, we would have no flowers. But so if you do native flowers mixed with some non-native flowers that bloom in July, then you can be providing food and food for pollinators across the whole season.
Which is great. Like that's what I was going to mention later is in my garden planning, obviously it's not just going to be native plants, but there's going to be areas, I guess. So I'll have little stopovers.
Yeah.
I have a lot planned and already made some progress. So that's really awesome. Good for me. Yeah. I'm the procrastinator. I'm going to do it this year. That means 2028. So, now here's a question. Like we've been doing a lot of beef on this show. Like we've been uncovering people's issues with things, like hard issues that hit you in the heart. So these questions came up for you specifically in my research of Joe Wilson. So why do you hate honeybees? Why do you hate them?
So clarification, I don't hate them, but it's just like so if you like elk and deer and moose, like that kind of animals, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people go out in the forests or in the fields and go look at deer or look at elk, or they'll go to Yellowstone National Park just to see the elk and the moose and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do those same people get excited about seeing a herd of cows on the side of the road? And the answer is no. Nobody's going to stop on their way to Yellowstone and be like, oh, look at that herd of cows. Let's take their picture, because everyone is kind of aware that cows are not a natural part of the landscape. They are an important commodity. I mean, I love to eat cow. It's pretty good. I really love to eat cow's product like ice cream. That's pretty good too. But I don't get excited about cows as a biologist, or especially as a conservation biologist. And so honeybees are the equivalent to cattle in the bug world.
Okay.
In a couple ways. One, they're not native to North America or South America. They were brought here by European settlers, just like cows.
Okay.
Because they're not native, they're not like a natural part of the landscape. So when you see honeybees in your flower garden in the front yard, that's kind of somebody's cows have come into your yard to graze, right?
Okay.
And two, they're semi-domesticated, kind of like a cow. Cows do pretty well on themselves out in the range, right? But they provide water for the cows. They have cowboys that go round them up every year to brand them and whatever. Honeybees are similar. They do the best when they are in one of those honeybee hives, those boxes, with a beekeeper taking care of them, checking them for parasites, making sure they have enough food in the dry times of the year, stuff like that. So they're not a wild animal. And so I don't hate them, but I definitely don't get excited about them because it's like cattle to me. It's a necessary part of our economy and of our landscape, but it's not something that I'm excited about. And just like cattle, if you had a patch of forest in Illinois and some rancher put 1,000 cows in there, it could do a lot of damage to that forest, right? You might not see any deer there anymore. You might not see any foxes or whatever. The same thing happens with honeybees. If you bring too many honeybees into an area, those honeybees are going to outcompete the native bees and have a negative impact on the wildlife, meaning the native bees.
Sure. Is
that a good enough answer to your question about me hating?
That was a great answer. There's a lot of strong language. There's a lot of strong language on here. So the actual question I have written down is, why do you hate cultivated lawns, with an emphasis on hate? It's probably the same reason I do. We haven't had a conversation about this yet, really. So you're a hard man to email, but I imagine you're busy. So yeah, Joe messaged me last week, like last Tuesday. So are we still on for tonight? And I literally said a bad word, and then I was like, oh no, I never heard back. So
I swear I responded, but oops.
I don't know. I missed it, or I might have missed it too.
We're here now, so we're good, right?
It's all good. But yeah, cultivated lawns, you said earlier that they're actually bad for the ecology of your area, or
they can be bad for it. They're not, just like cows and just like honeybees, they're not a natural part of most landscapes in North America. They are taking the place of whatever the natural vegetation that used to live there is. And there's a movement. You've heard of No Mow May. Do you guys have that movement up there in Illinois?
We don't. We have a November thing, but we don't.
Yeah, the No Shave November.
No
Mow May is the same for your lawn as No Shave November is for your mustache. So there was a study that has since been retracted, but nobody. So that means the author said, "Oh, whoops, we made some mistakes," and they took that study away. But the study said that you have more native bees if you don't mow your lawn for like 6 weeks, like you said earlier, right?
Okay.
So people have had this idea that in May we can help pollinators by not mowing our lawns. The problem I have, and I actually did like a little YouTube short, or just a little YouTube video about it once. When you don't mow your lawn in most parts of the country, it doesn't turn into a meadow. Meadows are awesome
No.
for bees,
No,
but
it does not. It's just a long grass.
It's just long grass, exactly. And so there are some parts, right? If you have a lawn that's kind of weedy anyway, it has dandelions and has clovers. If you don't mow it, yes, you will get more dandelions and clovers until the grass takes over, right? But so, yeah, I would say I'm anti-lawn, but I do have a big lawn in my yard. My house was built in the 70s, and it was landscaped to kind of look like a golf course. And we have been trying to figure out how to change that. But it's a daunting process. As you know, it sounds like you've been working on your lawn. It's not just something that you can just like do overnight, but it's the same thing. If you stop mowing, it's not going to help bees. If you have lawn, it's not going to help bees. You need to do some more native kind of landscaping. And that's really where not just bees, but all kind of wildlife will thrive.
Yeah, we now have, I've had a lot of questions because I have tarps out in the yard. Like not huge, but like a 3 foot across circular tarp that's rocked, it's got rocks and everything. It's down. I had to fix it. So we had a big crazy thunderstorm, but I have 2 of those spots. And then in the back, I have a huge, like 8x8 tarp that's pinned down my tiny, tiny yard. It would be the smallest golf course of all time. Not even mini golf. It would be like 2 holes of mini golf.
Perfect.
But they ask all the time, so I've come up with some pretty clever responses, like, "Oh, we had some rabbits and their roof collapsed, so we're just waiting for the roofers to come and have the tarp out for them." But to kill the grass is basically. I started it a couple of weeks ago, and it'll kill the grass underneath, so I can basically till it up and not have to worry about it seeding or.
Yeah, they call it solarizing, right? Is that the term?
I think so.
Because
I didn't know about the
basically,
term.
yeah, it cooks the ground kind of, so you're killing all the grass and the grass roots and all that stuff. So it's a good way to kind of neutralize the ground without having to spray herbicides or anything.
Which, you don't want to do, especially if you're trying to promote wildlife.
No, exactly.
Yeah, keep that stuff out, which is bad to my neighbors. The neighbor yard, they used to own my property, and they are a lot of chemicals. They have a company that takes care of the lawn. That's a lot of chemicals.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a fan, but we have to watch out. Like, I don't know why there's a strip on the side of my house that adjoins theirs that nothing has ever grown there, ever. I can't get weeds to grow. Nothing grows there. I don't know what the deal is. So it's frustrating because I want to put stuff there. I mean, it's a lot of shade, but no grass, no weeds, no nothing.
Interesting.
So so I don't want any of that to leach over. So I've kind of tried to put my garden areas farther away. And then I want to put like butterfly bush or something up against the sidewalk or near the sidewalk. So it's a little fence almost.
Yeah.
It's a lot of planning. It's a lot more planning than I thought it would be. I thought I would get a bucket of seeds and, mix them all up, mix all these different things together and just throw them willy-nilly. And there's going to be some of that, but there's going to be some very intentional placement of some of these plants, because I've looked up a lot of plants. Like, doing the research of the plants that are from your area is actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I found there's local, like, I have 3 or 4 neighbors that have done this, that have turned their yard into more of a pollinator's dream, and native plants. So I've been able to talk with them, and then they helped me source. They do like seed exchanges. You can just go and pick up packets of seeds or plants. Because a lot of these native plants, you probably know this, once you get them established, they propagate. Like, they become almost a pest. To people that aren't into them, they're a pest. So I hope my neighbors are okay with it, but they're going to be getting a lot of native plants too. So there are a lot of places, there are a lot of people that will help you like trade or just give you like, "Oh, I have pots of this stuff here, take it." And that'll help me get started too.
There's a comment that's actually really useful here from what is that, Menagerie, 503 Menagerie. The extension services. Most states have an extension associated with the university. Mine's Utah State University, where I work, has an extension. Theirs is OSU, but the extension. Usually most counties will have an extension office, and they are a great resource for native plants, but also for different kinds of gardening techniques and stuff. So that's a good place to start if you don't know where to start. Also, I got to grab my book here again. In this book that we mentioned, chapter 2. Yeah, it's a good book, right? So chapter 2 is, let's see what it's even called. I'm almost up here. Promoting bees in your neighborhood. And it has a table in the back. We have simplified the zones of the U.S. and we have
Oh,
a
wow.
table of plants that are good for bees in your area. So you can start
Nice.
there, or you can use the internet, which is actually free. But
It is, but the book is nice. Support your local or non-local Utah authors.
yeah, well, Olivia. So Olivia, who is the other author on the book, she did her PhD in Illinois. So she's local
Oh,
somewhere, and she lives in New Mexico now. So there you go.
see, a lot of people leave in Illinois, even the scientists. I don't know what the deal is. Um, yeah, I wanted to make a joke about you being a beeologist earlier, and I stopped myself. I don't do that. That would be a great. You should get some patches made or a shirt made or
I know
something.
that's a good idea.
People love bees. You can have people just stop you in the street.
It's true.
That might be annoying. That might be real annoying real
Yeah,
fast.
I kind of like talking about bees. I get to geek out,
Yes, yes, it's the best. This is what I get to do with Russ too. I can tell you guys are super related. Um, because Russ and I geek out about the weirdest things. Like he's super into puppets too. And so we had like a 45-minute conversation about puppets the other day, and it was
That's
fabulous.
awesome.
Just fabulous. No animals were involved. Um, what was I saying? So we had native plants, zones. I have my list of plants that I've got here too. Um, what should I be looking for in bee positive plants? Like, what are some of the I know there's different benefits to different plants, and obviously different bees are evolved to take advantage of different
Yeah.
plants. Um, but are there other benefits specifically to bees that different plants might have? Like, might they have a pocket, something between the leaves or something that they nest in, or they hold water, or I don't know.
No, that's a good question. So there's two ways that bees are going to use. Well, yeah, we'll say two broad ways bees will use plants. And depending on the bee, they will use different plants or use plants differently. So as far as flowers goes, a variety of flowers will support a variety of bees. When I say a variety, I'm talking about sizes of flowers and shapes of flowers and colors of flowers, and because there's sunflower style flowers, and there's
Yeah.
like pea flowers, which are kind of like a little tube,
Mhm.
So sizes and shapes and colors, flowers that bloom in the spring, flowers that bloom in the fall. The more kinds of flowers, the more kinds of bees you can support.
Okay.
So bees use flowers. Not all flowers are good for bees. Often native flowers are usually better. But there are certain flowers I never see bees at, like roses. Bees never visit those cultivated roses. You can often, if you look at a flower, a good rule of thumb is if it has lots of extra petals compared to like a wild version, then it's probably not as attractive to bees. So roses, for example, a cultivated rose has so many layers of petals that it looks like a big petal, beautiful rose, right? A wild rose only has one row of petals. So it doesn't really look like a rose when it's open because it opens and exposes the pollen and nectar. Or daisies. A wild daisy has that one row of white petals. A Gerbera daisy, which you see at flower shops and stuff, it has two or three rows of colorful petals. So the simpler flowers are often better. But so bees use flowers for food. They also will use flowers in various ways for nesting. There are certain kinds of bees that nest in the hollow stems of flowers. So I often will encourage people. A gardening term is deadheading. When the flower has died, you cut the flower head off, but you leave the flower stem for like some greenery in your garden. What that does is it leaves an open nest site for a bee. So some of those bees will chew their way into the pithy center of the stem, and that's where they build their nest. That means, though, if you deadhead the flower, you want to leave those dead stalks until the next year, so you don't cut down the bee nests and throw them away. If you don't want to leave the stalks up, you could cut them off and bundle them together and stick them kind of in the side of your yard, in the corner somewhere, because there's potential bee nests in there. So bees will use the stems for nests. Other bees will use some of the leaves. They will chew pieces of the leaves out to use for like wallpaper on the inside of their nest. Other bees will scrape the fuzz off of fuzzy-leafed plants. And so the plants are often used for nesting material in addition to food.
I love that. So you want a broad variety.
Broad variety is always going to be best.
Perfect.
And also one thing to think about, if you're trying to make your yard attractive to bees, you want it to be a little bit messy. Humans really like a well manicured yard. I mean, we think we like that. We have been culturally taught to like a well manicured yard. But bees and other wildlife, they like a little bit of a messy yard. If you can leave, flowers that died last year, leave the dead stalks in the corner of your yard, that's going to be great for bees. The sunflowers, when they die and they kind of droop over, birds are going to eat the seeds off of that, and bees will nest in the stems. So if you can leave some messiness, it's good.
We're going to have a lot of that. That's my whole thing. So now I have an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, why does your yard look like crap? The bees, man.
Yeah.
Got to support those bees so we can survive. Yeah, they're going extinct. We need to, humans can't live without bees, which maybe. It would be tough. It'd be tougher for sure.
It would be a lot boring, a really boring diet, right?
It would. Yes. Hope you like gluten, because
yeah, exactly. Or oatmeal.
Perfect. Or what?
Oatmeal.
Yes, I mean I do, but
it's good.
Only because they've got 50,000 flavors now. So
yeah, but most of those flavors are related to bee pollination. You could have oatmeal and cream, but no peaches. You could have maple brown sugar without the maple. What's that?
You're talking about natural flavors. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're talking about the dino egg oatmeal, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, you're not. Starbursts. I think they put Starburst in oatmeal now.
Oh, really?
Justin's here too. All right, good. Yeah, there's so much. We have so much processed garbage, crap. Yes, we would go extinct and be malnourished, and it'd be awful. Yeah, you gotta love bees. You just have to. No, those are good answers. I think there's so many benefits, and of course they have different. They've evolved to use the plants differently and optimally. Oh, I will say before I forget, what do you call them? Pea flowers, like a trumpet.
I said flower? They're like, I think, kind of like a trumpet or a little tube or something like that.
Definitely, if you get those plants for your yard, guys, for your native bees, put them where you're gonna sit, like somewhere where you can sit, because hearing a bee go into one of those plants. Like you can hear a bee buzz in your yard, and then they hit one of those flowers, and it just amplifies. Like it's an amplifier. So you just hear this all of a sudden. It'll make you jump out of your chair. It's awesome. So we had foxglove on our patio, and the bumblebees would come, and all of a sudden, I couldn't hear someone on the phone. Like I was talking on the phone, watching my bees and my hummingbirds. And it was so loud. My friend on the phone was like, "Is that a plane going by?" No, it's just Jeff, our bumblebee. So I know they're girls. I don't know. He's a Jeff, probably a girl, right?
Yeah, well, there's male bumblebees on your flowers too, depending on the time of year.
Over. I like that they when we had our sunflowers, they wouldn't overnight if they stayed out too late and it got too cold.
Yeah.
They would just sit on the flowers and stay there all night. And I thought that was amazing. Yeah. They're very amicable to you picking them up at that point, but I didn't, because I didn't know where I didn't want to hold them all night to keep them warm.
Well, and so a lot of the time, especially out west, but I think it's true in the Midwest as well. So most bees are solitary. They don't live in a hive. Bumblebees are one exception, that there is a small hive, but most bees are solitary. And on sunflowers, one of the most common bees we see on sunflowers, it's a big category of bees called Longhorn bees. So they have, the males have long antennas, and the females are look like small bumblebees. They're small and fuzzy, but they like sunflowers. But male solitary bees don't help with the nest at all. So they have nowhere to stay. And so they do just sleep in the sunflower at night, sometime in an aggregation of 20 of these longhorn bees sitting inside a sunflower. So you can go up to them and see them at night. The longhorn bees, you can tell, are males because they have the long antennas. But yeah, you could pick those up. Males don't have stingers, so they can't sting you.
Oh, wow, that's even better.
But that's just where they sleep. So I would encourage everybody in the summer, in the evening or the early morning, go look inside the sunflowers, and you will see various kinds of male bees sleeping inside there. Yeah,
I try to sit outside and look at the stars and just maybe spot some bats. I'm a huge fan of bats as well.
Yeah.
We're putting up bat houses, and
awesome.
What do you think of those? They're like this big, maybe a box thing that's like a wild bee.
Bee hotel.
Hotel. Yeah, that thing. Is that effective or is that a waste?
No, I have mixed feelings about them. I have some in my yard sometimes. So the bee hotels are good for a certain subset of bees that in nature, they will nest in hollow cavities, like hollow holes in dead tree stumps. So
Okay.
in a forest, you have a lot of dead trees, and in those dead trees, there's abandoned beetle burrows when the beetle larva was eating the live tree, and it leaves a tunnel into that
Okay. Yeah.
dead tree. In nature, the bee will find that abandoned tunnel and repurpose it. Some of them use cut pieces of leaves, like I mentioned, to line the inside of that nest.
Sure.
Some of them use mud to line the inside of the nest. So anyway, they're finding these abandoned holes. Most of our neighborhoods, if not all of our neighborhoods, we don't leave dead trees around. So,
Right.
so the natural nesting site for all these cavity nesting bees is gone. So bee hotels can be beneficial because we are re-providing some of these natural cavities. Some people will just bundle together a bunch of hollow sticks. You can buy the ones that look a little bit more nice. It's like a little birdhouse,
Yeah.
and on the front of the
Right.
birdhouse is a bunch of bamboo pieces or something. I've had less success with the store-bought ones than if I just drill a bunch of holes in a log.
Okay.
But the danger in the bee hotels, there's only been one real study on this, and it was kind of hypothetical. But now that we've all gone through COVID, we have all learned that social distancing can reduce the spread of disease. That is true before COVID, and it's true after COVID, right? If you're sick,
Right.
and you stay away from people, you don't get them sick. In nature, these bees are naturally social distanced. They're nesting in random holes in dead logs.
Oh,
When we
got
make
it.
a bee hotel, we are getting rid of all the social distancing naturally. And so what it means is there's more likelihood for disease to spread or parasites to spread or other things like that. So if you have a parasitic wasp that finds one bee nest, in nature, it would find one bee nest and then go on and look through the forest for another bee nest. In a bee hotel, it finds one bee nest, and then 2 centimeters away is another bee nest. And so you can increase the parasite load higher than it might normally be.
Okay. Okay. So that's not great. And I'd probably have those wasps here.
Yeah. But I should say, though, as a biologist, I left the wasps in my bee hotel for a while because there's natural ebbs and flows in predator-prey populations. And so the wasps aren't necessarily bad, but if your whole goal is just bees, then the wasps were harming the bee population. But so what I often suggest is if you're going to do a bee hotel, every couple of years you might want to get a new one. Because you can increase, and it's not just wasps, but there's fungal parasites and there's viral parasites, and there's lots of things that can attack the nests. And when you have them all close together, that will just spread faster.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes proximity.
But they are good in that if you don't have them, there's no place for those bees to nest.
I do like the log idea. I have a couple of massive hollow logs that I purposed for an ant farm, and I can take the leftovers and drill holes in them. That's great. That's genius. Here's a question we didn't ask last time. What's your favorite bee?
So I'm gonna dodge the question a little bit because, like this question says, with 4,000 species, it's hard to choose just one. But I will choose one genus.
Okay.
So currently my favorite genus of bees is actually one of the most species rich genera. There's like over 600 species in it. The genus is Perdita, Perdita, Perdita. Okay. It's the dog's name on 101 Dalmatians. I think one of their dogs is named Perdita. It's Latin for lost. So it could be because these bees are some of the smallest bees in the world. I think I have a picture. Did I send you that picture of the bee on a quarter?
A while ago. Yeah.
I can show you a picture from my book maybe. Perdita are some of the smallest bees in the world. Here's just a picture that I use a lot. This is a carpenter bee and a fairy bee, which is the genus Perdita next to it. So it's sitting on a quarter. So they're pretty small bees. The Perdita is that little one over there.
Yeah.
The clear little one. So I like them partly because they're little. When we first wrote the book, there was no common name for the genus Perdita. And so I put on Twitter something about, these are some of my favorite bees. What should we call them as a common name? And somebody said, and I can't remember who it was. I'd have to go back and look. I'm not super active on Twitter anymore, but they said fairy penguins are the smallest penguin. Maybe we should call them fairy bees. And I thought, well, that's perfect because they're so small and they just kind of flitter around flowers. So almost like ghosts or like fairies. The smallest bee in the world, potentially the smallest bee in the world, is a fairy bee. Lives down in the southwestern deserts. It's only 2 millimeters long. That's as long as George Washington's nose on a quarter. Really small.
I thought we're going to stop it there. As long as George Washington's nose.
It's long. That's short, I mean.
Tiniest nose. So he wasn't a nose picker, that guy. That'd be really hard to pick your nose 2 millimeters long.
Yeah, so fairy bees, that's my answer. Final answer.
I like that. I think the bees that I'm appreciating in my yard now are the fairy bees, or they're probably close. I don't know for sure. I have to.
Oh, so there could be in the Midwest and in the East. There's not as many fairy bee species. There's only about 8 species, I think, east of the Mississippi River.
Okay.
In the southwestern U.S., there are hundreds of species. So they're really desert adapted. They like if in the East, if you find kind of a sandy area, they like sandy area, and there's several species that you'll find on goldenrod in the East. It's a specialist on goldenrod. Well, that species out there.
Oh, so they help goldenrod. So those species can just go. I hate to be that guy, but I'm a goldenrod. Well, that's the one that sets me off. So
the allergies.
Yeah.
Are you sure
or
it's
the adjacent? You know what? I hear that. I'm glad you brought that up because it's not. There's another flower that blooms right where goldenrod is, and that's usually the culprit.
That's what I've read. I'm not allergic to either, but I've read that goldenrod often gets a bad rap for other species.
We blame goldenrod. We went on a road trip, my wife and I, and it was beautiful out, some windows down, and every time goldenrod was in full bloom, all along both sides of each highway or rural road, or it was everywhere, and I was a mess. So if it's not goldenrod, this other species is there right alongside it. Yeah. So.
I mean, it could very well be goldenrod,
It could. I haven't been specifically tested, but that was enough evidence for me, like adjacent to evidence. I was like, not a fan. Not a fan. I'm kidding about eliminating the bees to get rid of the plants. Obviously,
it won't work anyway.
Kind of. Yeah, I know. There's no way. They would find something else, right? And then bring goldenrod back. We were storing it. Are there any plants that I could put in my garden that would specifically harm the bees? Are there that would bother native bees that aren't, like you're saying, the ones that just aren't beneficial, like the ones that are tightly packed or not very good? They just don't like them.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond the carnivorous plants, they're not going to grow in.
No, I can't think of any that would be negative for native bees. There would be neutral ones that wouldn't benefit them at all, but I can't think of any plant that would, except for grass, like your lawn.
Does grass harm them?
So what happens is 70% of bees in North America nest in the ground, and they usually like to nest in bare patches of dirt, bare sunny patches especially. If we just plant grass everywhere, that is eliminating a lot of the prime nesting sites. So it would harm them kind of secondhand in that we are taking away nesting sites. So it's not going to directly harm them, and I can't think of any plants that would, but that's the closest to it.
So it's a detriment to them. They have to find somewhere else to nest. Okay.
Yeah, so and there are some that will nest in the lawn, but many of them just like bare soil.
So I need a bare patch as well.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. It's tricky because you want to keep a bare patch weed free if you can. I usually just hoe off the tops of the weeds with my hoe, and it works okay. The bees are often nesting several inches, even to several feet under the surface. So if you just scrape the top off, it's usually okay. Especially if you're doing hoeing in the evening or in the early morning before the bees are active. So they're already in their nest, and so if you hoe off the top, it's not going to really make a difference.
They'll just burrow back out. They'll be fine if I do happen to do that, just like the ants. Okay. Good.
Do leave bare patches of dirt is good.
How big? Are you talking like a foot or?
Bees are flexible. So what I've tried to do in my yard, I've tried a couple different things. In my flowers, originally I just left bare dirt between all the flowers, and I did a drip irrigation system. And the bees would just nest in that dirt around the flowers. More recently, I have put mulch down, which bees generally avoid, is the thick layers of mulch. But there's these rings, like metal rings that you can buy that kind of, you put them around your tree. It's like it's just like a metal 3 inches deep ring that goes around a tree, like as curbing almost.
Okay.
Anyway, I put some
Yeah.
of those metal rings in the ground. I put mulch around the metal ring, but just left bare dirt on the inside. So it was like a designating bee nesting spot. It is kind of working, but not as well as just the bare dirt.
I like the idea of the metal ring. I was thinking about that too, to kind of to help things not encroach as much.
Yeah, exactly. You can also do some like flagstones, but just leave kind of gaps of dirt between the flagstones, and bees will nest in those gaps.
Oh, that's a good idea. Because I was thinking of doing that for a walkway through through the yard, so we can go through the little
that
areas.
works good.
All right, good. That's a repurpose of a thing I was already doing.
Perfect.
With maybe some clover, some of the white, the white flowering clover.
Yeah.
That's the thing I want to do for the little guys. So, okay, I have so many other questions. I'm sorry. And so it would benefit them, like you're saying, to leave, like if you had a wood pile or a small area, we could do like a pile of sticks, branches, whatever. That would benefit them as well.
Yeah, kind of. So
And other
not
things. Okay.
the wood pile and the pile of sticks, not as much, except for like bumblebee queens overwintering in the winter. They'll kind of go find a secluded area and just hibernate. But generally, if it's a pile of sticks, it needs to be kind of pithy stemmed sticks, like raspberry stems, or if you can imagine a kind of bush you might have in your yard. If you trim it, it almost looks like styrofoam in the center. That's the kind of stems that bees will nest in. But if it's just sticks, like if you take your maple tree and you cut sticks off of that, they're not going to do anything with it because those are just solid sticks.
Throw it in the back. Just get you called on the council. The city council will come out and leave you a note. Like,
exactly.
Hey,
then all you have is a pile of sticks.
That's exactly what happened to me. So I was like, oh, this will help all these animals. And no, it didn't. It just got me in trouble.
It's the same thing that there's. So just like the no mow May is a movement, there's an idea that people have that you should leave your leaves in the fall. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I do that.
People often mistakenly think they mean just leave your leaves all over your lawn. What they're really saying, because all that does is kill your lawn. What you can do is you can push your leaves all to the corner of your yard or into your flower beds. So you do have piles of leaves around, but if you have lawn, leaving the leaves on your lawn is going to kill the lawn. So you just need to have designated like leaf litter areas. And that does provide habitat for some organisms. Not a ton of bees other than those wintering queens that I mentioned with the bumblebees, but.
Sure. Okay, yeah, that stuff isn't for bees, but it's for the other guys too, probably.
Yeah, caterpillars and
other guys. Yeah, you want to keep those around. So
totally.
We don't have any turtles. But yeah, I like the idea of, and it'll help mulch into your garden beds anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Putting your leaves in there after everything's gone or dead or harvested or whatever. What are some of your best recommendations for your pollinators, like that you would recommend? I guess you're in Utah, so this would be Utah specific, but what kind of thing are you looking for? You said flowers. You want to have your garden planned out so you have flowers all year round.
Yeah. So you want to make sure you're getting early spring blooming flowers, and those are going to be different in different parts of the world. I think there's one. What is the one that blooms in the spring over there where you are? Clarkia, maybe. It's like a little pink flower that grows in the forest. Blooms pretty early.
Okay, yeah, it's like a little hanging flower.
Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, often the earliest blooming flowers are actually our trees. So willow is really good for early spring. Maple is good for early to middle-ish spring, and bees will visit both of those. People like to talk about dandelions and leaving your dandelions. Those are okay. Dandelions aren't native to the U.S., and so some bees will use them, but they're not like a major food source for any specific kind of bee. Willows are used more often than dandelions, though dandelions aren't going to hurt the bees.
I would love a willow tree in my yard.
Well, I've even noticed, I have a little YouTube video about it even, but some of the ornamental willows you buy that are kind of willow bushes, bees love those too, as well as the native willows. The big willow, like a weeping willow tree, I don't see as many bees on, but I'm sure that there would be some that visit it. There's other things like Oregon grape out west. It looks like a holly leaf with yellow flowers. Oregon grape is a good early spring bush that blooms. But really, I don't have any real good recommendations because it's just so different from area to area. Like I could drive 45 minutes away from here and be, 1,000 feet higher in elevation. And it's going to be a whole different plant community that's good.
Oh, sure.
So, but really the idea is you want something blooming across the whole, from spring to late fall. If you can have your yard with something blooming, but that can be daunting to say, well, how am I going to do that? My recommendation is start with a flower and go from there. Because even a single flower in your yard is going to be providing more than you had before if you didn't have any flowers. If you can do a single native flower, that's even better. Sunflowers are good because they're easy to grow. A lot of bees like them. And they do pretty well in many parts of the country. So sunflowers is a good one, but that's only a late summer blooming thing. So you have to find something else for the spring. But if you just start, as you see, as you mentioned earlier, you said it's fun to go find, it's like detective work almost. Where do I get these flowers? Which flowers are good? So it can be fun, but it can also be daunting. So just start somewhere. And then the next year you might say, I'm going to put another flower in. Gardens, like vegetable gardens, can also be good for bees. So you can have kind of a dual purpose section.
We're going to do a lot of peas. We're going to do a lot of peas that vine. So the one side of my garage is going to be vining flowers. That's my favorite, like clematis, morning glory, all that stuff. I love those guys. The red trumpets, they're pretty invasive though. They get a little crazy, but I don't care. I love them.
Oh, that reminds me of something actually. So red flowers are often not very visited by bees. Hummingbirds love red flowers, but it's because bees, they actually can't see the color red. And so most red flowers are not that attractive to bees. There are some exceptions, but hummingbirds really like red flowers. So anyway,
I think I noticed that. I noticed that the bees never bothered those flowers at all. They like, in my area where I was, not far from here, but it was a lot of the white flowers, more yellow.
Yeah.
Some of them with like a violet. I don't know if the violet attracted them or not. So it would be like a mix. It did. Okay.
Yeah.
Or probably did. Excellent. I didn't realize that they don't really see red.
Yeah. So if they kind of have a similar color vision to us, but it's shifted in one direction. So they can't see red, which is at one end of the color spectrum, but they can see, where's my finger? The other side of the color spectrum is ultraviolet, which we cannot see. So this is shifted. So they can see ultraviolet, but not red. We can see red, but not ultraviolet. So
fun.
Super cool.
See? So look at what they're going to want. There's plenty of websites too that'll tell you, like if you want to do native plants in your area, there's plenty of websites. There's usually people at a locally owned nursery that can help you out. That know things. There's plenty of people near you or internet wise. I plan on posting some success stories and a lot of photos on the Facebook group.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
And probably some garden tours throughout the year here as well. Because it's just so much. It's so cool to just be able to go out in your yard and be like, I'm going to do a YouTube short today. Here's a bee that is in my yard that you may have never seen.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, speaking of, can I promote one more of my books?
Yeah.
I'm going to do 2 more of my books because when you get your native bee garden, you're going to go out there and you're going to be like, what kind of bee is that, right? So this book, the Bees in Your Backyard book, it's an overview to bees in North America, but it doesn't have a lot of identification stuff in there because it's just a broad overview. Recently, we have me and Olivia did these 2 books. So Common Bees of Eastern North America and Common Bees of Western North America. These are more true.
I need to buy both of those. I'm in the Midwest. I need both books.
So what we considered east. Oops, this is east. We considered east of the Rocky Mountains. So this should cover you pretty well. But it's more of a true field guide. It's a little bit more technical, but it has stuff like the distribution maps. Oops. And it has identification tips and stuff like that in here. So it will be fantastic. And again, like east of the Mississippi River, there's 750 different bee species. We did not put 750 bee species in here. So we tried to choose some of the common ones or some of the more interesting ones. So you will probably be able to find a bee that is not in this book, but it will get you pretty close. And every species that we do have in here, at the end, it has a similar species section. So you can kind of see what might be similar to that. And at the very back, if you're wanting to get a little bit more scientific, the very back has a dichotomous key. So you can try to key out the bees to the different genera. These are, someone's asking online, where do I get these books? But I just tell people to go to Amazon. If you are anti-Amazon, please go to your local bookstore and ask them to carry them. Amazon has them you're usually on sale, and they're usually shipped pretty fast. So these are both Princeton University Press. You could go right from the press. I don't sell them myself because I don't want to have a like a pallet of books in my garage to mail out to people when I'm trying to compete against people like Amazon. But
you could get some Mason bees to get into the box. That'd be good. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that they're pretty decent books as far as that goes. But again, there can be some frustrating parts in there for sure if you're trying to identify your bees.
Absolutely. I have that problem with ants, being into ants.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what is this? And everybody's like, you need a better picture, because the ant people are, I don't know if the bee community people are that intense, but man, they get intense and they won't even attempt to. And it's like, can you give me something? Can you give me, like you're saying, the genera, like the broad family?
Do you use iNaturalist ever? Have you heard of it?
A little bit. iNaturalist is even daunting because there's so much.
Yeah. So iNaturalist, if anyone doesn't know, it's an app or a website that you can take a photo and upload it, and it will put like the location information in there. What's cool about it is there's some really active bee researchers that will go and identify your bees. There's one guy in particular who's really, really good at identifying bees from pictures. He basically has like an encyclopedic brain of bee distributions and descriptions. So if you upload your bee pictures, you will. Don't always. So iNaturalist tries to guess using some artificial intelligence, guess what the bee is. That is, artificial intelligence isn't advanced enough to know from a picture which species it is, but it can get you kind of close. And then some of the bee experts can get you even closer.
Right. Like I've used Google Lens to try to narrow it down. And Google Lens is rough at best, even with flowers or whatever. Don't post entomology. Entomology is a group on Facebook that is more of a comedy insect site. They have some stuff that's kind of information adjacent, but it's mostly. And then people will be like, identify this for me. And it's like, it's a brown recluse no matter what it is.
Oh, yeah, no, always. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, give me a velvet worm. And they're like, it's a brown recluse. Or they'll ask me, what area are you from? I'm from Illinois. It's brown recluse. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is.
Still is. Kill it.
Yeah. So it's one of their jams. I don't know that I would kill the brown recluse. Like, it needs to be there,
Everyone's scared of him.
It's fine. I mean, if you had one in your hand and were messing with it, that'd be a problem.
It's true.
But otherwise, I just saw the first jumping spider I'd ever be afraid of because I saw the fangs on it and was like, what is this? It's from Australia, of course.
Oh, of course.
It's the biggest species, Giganteus.
Oh, I have to look it up.
Giganteus, I believe. But it's about as big as your thumbnail, at least. Probably a lot bigger.
Jumping spiders are my favorite spider.
Absolutely. We've been talking about them for weeks now. But this guy has these crazy fold-in fangs that come in kind of from the side, but they're, for that body size, they're huge. They're huge. They would definitely get into you if they
That's awesome.
decided to, which would be probably, you'd have to really mess with a jumping spider.
I'm sure. They're so cuddly and friendly.
Oh, this one's not. This Australian is kind of like, the males anyway are kind of like that shiny, creepy spider, like funnel web. Not funnel web, but I don't know what that one is. Yeah, I think it's a funnel web. That shiny, glistening, kind of gross spider. That thing going on.
Okay, I'm just looking it up. Giganteus or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's HYLL
US.
US. It's in my phone somewhere.
It looks. Oh yeah, it does look big and kind of creepy.
Yeah, and the fangs. If you get a facial shot, those fangs are.
Yeah, they're like folded in like that, like double folded. It looks like a what are those called? A huntsman? Yeah, it looks scary.
Yeah, they have the huntsman. I mean, if it was a lot bigger, it would be a major problem. But again, they're super smart. It's fun watching them because the intelligence and the deliberate movements, and they're curious about us. It's crazy.
They're cool.
That's why I love the bees too. Like you'll get that from a bee. You'll get that where they're checking you out, trying to figure out what you're doing in their area.
Yeah, bee watching is my favorite hobby because I'm a geek.
What season are those ones? You posted the videos of the ones that build the tubes in the ground.
Yeah, those are so they're different species, but they're all specialists. So they specialize. So they're mostly spring. spring into summer. Because those ones that I posted, those are specialists on globe mallow flowers, the genus Sphaerosia, which is a western orange flower thing. There's other ones that specialize on sunflowers and other ones that specialize on cactuses. But so most of them are from like May through July is their prime activity period. The pictures I posted with there's a video with a bunch of the nests together. I think that was in May probably.
And that's the one where the males like all have a war. And then,
there is I think it's who did that video? National Geographic might have done that video.
Okay.
Someone did. It was out of California, and that happens sometimes with various kinds of bees. When a female first emerges in the spring, males really want to mate with her because they can get they can reproduce more if they're the first ones. Female bees will mate, and then they'll store the sperm alive and use it whenever they want. So once they've mated, a lot of times they're just not receptive anymore. And so depending on the kind of bee, but yeah, so in the spring, when the females are first emerging, the males do kind of conglomerate around trying to be the one to mate.
Okay. So they make those big balls and then they just fall dead. Like it was just littered with dead males the next day. It was like, oh, this is kind of sad.
And there's also a video of I think there's an Australian bee, the blue banded bee. Someone else did a video of those ones. They'll actually fight with each other and sometimes accidentally maybe bite each other's heads off.
But, accidentally. Sure. Sure. Like the murder hornets do to all the bees. I can't get over the adaptations like that. So the hornets that attack these nests, the bees have figured out that they can cook them. Yeah. And that is insane to me. Like they just pile on and vibrate until it raises the temperature enough that they cook, and the bees are barely survive. They can survive like 2 degrees more or something.
Yeah,
it's
something
really
like that.
finite. Yeah, and to be like, okay, hundreds of us are gonna die, and we're all gonna feel like we're about to die, but we're gonna kill this wasp. This is how we do it.
It's cool. I wish all of the bees could do that. So that's just a certain variety of honeybee that's from Asia, where those giant hornets are from. The European honeybees that we have in most of the world can't do that.
Sure, right. This is like I wouldn't call it would you call it a learned behavior? Like they're that?
I think it's just an evolved thing. They have evolved this defensive behavior because they evolved in harmony with those giant hornets, and so so it's not necessarily learned or even communicated, other than that is a defensive behavior that was successful for them. And the European varieties that we have didn't evolve with hornets that did the same thing. So they never evolved that kind of defensive behavior because that happens inside the hive.
Yeah. They didn't have to do that because the wasps are in there basically for the larva, right? That's their goal.
The wasp will kill all the bees to take the larva back to feed their babies. Yeah.
Which is, nature's pretty savage.
It is.
And it must work out enough because they're not going away. These hornets are going to be there a long time.
Yeah.
Those are extreme. I probably wouldn't have any mercy on those hornets. So
that's the one that was it like 3 years ago. There was some discovered in British Columbia and then in Washington State. They are native to East Asia. Japan and lowland forests in that area. So they were worried that it would spread around the Pacific Northwest. They found some hives, and I think they tried to kill all the hives. I haven't heard if there's been any new sightings of them. But with the global commerce that we have, you get lots of stuff spread around accidentally, and that's probably what happened there is in a shipping container or something.
Sure. Yeah, that's why we have, I just was reading about spotted lanternflies and was hoping that some kind of a wasp would pick up on them as a prey species, and I would trade wasps for spotted lanternflies. I feel like that would be okay with me. But yeah, they were talking about birds. Something about this is how wild nature is, but birds don't eat the ones that, if there's a high area of or high density of this tree, it's a certain kind of tree that's also invasive that the spotted lanternflies evolved with. But if they eat off of this tree, they taste awful and smell awful. And
interesting.
Are unpalatable. But the birds that were eating them were taking the wings off.
Huh.
They would take the wings off first and then eat the fly. So they're trying to promote that, or tell people to get rid of this tree if you can. Like, you can't eradicate it, but you can
Interesting.
knock it down and get it out of there. But it's pretty much, the tree is everywhere. There's nothing
Hmm.
that's going to get rid of it. But it's wild that that's, one invasive species helped propagate, and honestly probably brought with them the spotted lanternfly, if they're that intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to see that, how that just gets tied together. Um, and then there's, the bees and everything are like that too. Like, they're set with certain plants, they're set with certain cycles. Um, it's so wild. You must see it a lot more in your career, the interconnectedness of the natural world. Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about bees in particular is there is such a tight relationship between bees and flowers, like a tight, not a one-to-one relationship, but just a complex relationship. So we always talk about flowers being the base of the food chain, or plants, right? Plants are the base of the food chain, but
Yeah.
really most plants don't reproduce without bees. And so kind of bees are the enablers at the base of the food chain. So yeah, but I just love the interesting connections between bees and their host flowers. Like, why are some so specialized that they only visit one kind of flower, and why are others so generalized that they can basically visit any flower? It's just really interesting evolutionary stories there.
Is it true that, now I was reading, basically, to when I was thinking about mixing the garden, like, is this going to be better than just having one or the other? I've gone with better. Um, is there one species of bee this is really going to help, because they're just catch-all pollinators? And what I was finding is bumblebees are kind of like, they don't care. They'll just eat whatever, or they'll go to whatever. They have preferences, obviously, but they'll just go to pretty much any flower they can find.
Yeah, bumblebees are what we would call a broad generalist. They will collect pollen from a wide variety of flowers. They do like specific kinds of flowers. Like, they still won't go to roses, but they're not.
Sure, sure.
They have the ability to go to lots of flowers. Some bees don't even have that ability. Their brain only detects one kind of thing as a potential food source. But yeah, bumblebees are broad generalists. Sweat bees are also generalists.
Okay.
So they'll be visiting lots of different kinds of flowers in your yard. And then we have a range of things between a broad generalist and a strict specialist. Like, longhorn bees like flowers in the sunflower family, but that includes hundreds of different kinds of flowers. So you have generalists,
Yeah.
specialists, and everything in between.
Which I'm hoping to get some of everything, but I don't know how the specialists that are so extreme survive in areas where the weather is differing. Do they just hibernate for a long time, or go
Well, that's what's
dormant?
interesting. Bees have this ability. Some bees have this ability. They call it, what do they call it? Bet hedging. So many bees nest under the ground, and sometimes bees will. So the life cycle of a bee is the adult bee collects a bunch of pollen and nectar, puts it in the nest underground, lays an egg on it, then flies away and never comes back. The egg hatches. The larva eats the pollen and nectar that was left for it, and then it pupates. Often at that pupal stage, it will kind of go into suspended animation until the next year. So let's say this bee is active in June. The larva eats all the end of June and into July. Then it pupates at the end of July. And then normally it will wait until the next June before it crawls out of the ground and starts the cycle all over again. But bet hedging is that there are certain environmental cues that tell that bee larva living underground to stay in suspended animation or to finish its development. So if it's a bad year, many of these bees might stay in this suspended animation for multiple years. So they stay as a pupa underground for multiple years. So there's one documented case when it was 7 years that these bee larvae or pupae stayed dormant for 7 years, and then they emerged. So yeah, so they can kind of judge it based on the weather. So if you have a really bad year, a really dry year, a really cold winter or something, the bees can just kind of stay in their nests underground and wait till the next cycle, the next season. I mean, the next year.
That is crazy. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah. Did you lose your mic?
Okay. Sorry, I switched it because it was giving me weird feedback. So okay, good.
Sounds fine.
Yeah, I was getting like this weird, like you were clucking your tongue or something, and I knew you weren't, because it was kind of while you were. Yep. See. Okay, maybe you were. All right. That was exactly the stuff. No. Um, yeah, I can't get over the adaptations. Now, what else can I
Yeah.
add to my native garden that would be like water sources? Or there other things that I need to be thinking about?
Oh yeah, no, that's a good question. I actually just did a reel on Instagram today about that, about water. Kind of, it was a brief one. Honeybees need water. The honeybees aren't from
Sure.
here, and they're like cows need water, right? When you
Sure.
have cows or sheep out in the forest, you give them troughs of water. Honeybees will drink from a. People will say, put a bowl of water with marbles in it, or they say, buy these cute little cups that you stick in your flower beds for the honeybees. Honeybees are the only ones that use that. Native bees get
Okay.
their water from nectar, and so to
Oh,
provide for them, they just need flowers. You don't need to do extra. If you want to put a bowl of water with marbles in it, honeybees and wasps will appreciate it, but
okay.
the native bees don't really need it. They just need flowers. So really, there's not a lot that we need to do in our yards other than planting flowers, being aware that some bees nest in the ground, so leave some ground,
Okay.
and think about bee hotels if you want to.
Or something. You could use something to help them
Yeah.
out. So yeah, the menagerie loves that you're busting all these myths. Um,
That's what I do.
that's good. That's good because there's a lot of. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt anything. And obviously, I'm gonna have water sources for like the snakes and the other animals that are in the yard. But
Yeah.
I was wondering if I had to take certain because you have to have the marbles or the flow in. And it's like, how do
Yeah.
they drink
Well, it was
otherwise?
interesting. So the reel so what I did on Instagram today is there's a reel that I had saved that someone was selling these little teeny, like 1 tablespoon cups that you stick in your flower beds, and they had painted them with like UV reflective paint, so they looked like little flowers. And they said, "Oh, just
Okay.
fill these with water, and you'll be helping the bees." And I thought, well, all that's doing is confusing the bees because that's not benefiting them. They just go to these little cups thinking it's a flower, find out it's just water, and they just wasted their time because they're not getting anything out of it. You know, uh, it's funny because humans like to blame ourselves for everything in nature that's bad that's happening, like
Yeah.
like extinctions, which sometimes is true, but we also like to somehow assume that we are the only ones that can fix it. And it's like, what product, like a while ago there was these ideas that drones were going to help save the world because pollinators are declining. It's like, no, drones are not going to save the world. Let's just keep the bees. Bees are way better at it than any drone is going to do.
Have you
But
seen any videos of those? I've just seen it in nurseries where they have this pollinator robot that
yeah,
goes around. It's got like all these little prongs, and then there's like this little. They each have like a hair on the end, and it like tickles the flowers. It's so funny.
it's so
It's the
weird. Like
goofiest thing.
people, what people, I don't know what they think we're going to do. Like it's
How
really
many
so.
millions?
So
How
speaking
many
of
millions
busting
did they
myth,
spend on that? Yeah,
can I
yeah.
can I talk about one more myth that it's a misunderstanding kind of myth. Uh,
Okay.
Often people will ask me about bees going extinct or bees disappearing, right?
Yeah,
And so I can't remember who it was that said earlier that there's 4,000 species of bees just in the U.S., which is true.
yeah. That
Um,
was menagerie.
Perfect. So when people say are bees disappearing or are bees going extinct, I often say, okay, there's 1,000 kinds of birds in the U.S., which is true. So
Okay.
1/4 as many kinds of birds as there are bees. But if someone said to you, hey, I just read an article that said birds are going extinct, you probably, hopefully, would say, what birds? Like, are they talking about
Yeah,
seagulls? Are they talking about sparrows or hummingbirds? Like, which kind of bird are they talking about?
yeah, yeah.
And it's the same thing that we should do when we hear this about bees. Like, new study shows bees are disappearing. We need to stop and be like, well, which bees? Like, there's 4,000
Yeah.
kinds. Are we talking about bumblebees? And there's 50 kinds of bumblebees. Are we talking about sweat bees? Like, what are we talking about here? Because the reality is, for most of the 4,000 species, we have no idea if they're disappearing or not.
Oh,
In order to know if something is declining, you have to know how many there were to compare it to today, right? To see if
okay.
there's a change. We don't know how many there were for almost any parts of the US. we don't know how many there are for most parts of the US. So to say that they're declining is really, really premature. There are some studies, there were some studies on bumblebees. A study, I think it studied 18 different bumblebees using museum databases and museum collections, and they went out and recollected to see what was found before the 1980s and what has been found since the 1980s. Out of those 18 bumblebee species, they found that like 2 or 3 of them were steeply declining. There's much less of them than there used to be. And then for a few of them, they're expanding. There's much more of them there used to be. And for most of those 18 species, there wasn't enough data. So we don't even know if most bees are disappearing or not. And what's problematic is that culturally we have adopted this idea that bees are disappearing. And so there's lots of professors and graduate students that go into this saying, okay, because of this fact that bees are disappearing, let's ask these questions and do these studies. But so if your study is based on a flawed premise, then your study will probably be flawed. So yeah, we don't know enough about it. We need more research, but it's hard to do that kind of research to know what bees are in an area. We did a study of bees in southern Utah for 4 years, me and Olivia. It was Olivia's project, and I got to tag along a little bit. Over the 4 years, we found 660 bee species in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. But we didn't find 660 bee species any one year. The first year it was like 350. The second year we added like 150 additional species. And the third year we found another additional 100 species. So you can collect bees for 4 years intensely in an area and still not know how many bees live there. How many species?
Yeah, how do you know? Species for sure, and then individuals. Like what are you gonna drop a little drop of paint on each one or something? And
but even like just the species richness, like the number of bee species, it's hard to know that. Every time we go out and catch bees, we find ones that we didn't find before, and we also find a lot of new species that are new to science. So it's just there's a lot unknown. We say there's around 4,000 in the US, but we don't know because there's a lot of unknowns.
Those studies, just the staggering amount of prep and how the studies get done and funding the studies, and it's crazy. And you see them throwing away money on studies that who cares? Like I saw a study, I don't even know how much money it would be, but it's studying how much energy a roach uses, whether it's running on the ground flat or up a wall or on the ceiling upside down. So they built these tiny treadmills, and they put them in basically a vacuum chamber to see how much they were breathing. It was insane. And they could put the treadmill upside down or on the ground or whatever. Like that had to cost a little bit of money.
Well, and that's the problem is people, some people feel the same way about bee studies. Like if they say, oh, you want to know how many bees live in this mountain range in southern Utah? Like, who cares? Like, what difference does it make? Because really, as far as agriculture goes, it doesn't make a difference. We're not planting any crops in that field. As far as conservation goes, it doesn't matter because that mountain is going to be that mountain there still in 20 years and in 50 years. So some people feel the same way. They just say, why would we want to spend all this money so Joe and his friends can go catch bees in a net and look under a microscope, And then other people complain because most of these bee studies, we kill these bees. Let me just show you here. So I have dead bees on pins. We kill these bees because we can't identify almost any of these species until we look at them under a microscope. You'll see if you get these field guides, bee identification is tricky, and it takes experts with microscopes. So,
because it gets so finite. There's so many that look exactly the same to the eye, but then there's different bits, that go along that are. With that, I don't know that about bees, but I assume because of ants and wasps and bees are kind of related. They're just
close relatives.
Yeah, so I would just assume because ants are the same thing. It's is this a new species? It looks exactly the same as 50 other species, but yes, it is. It's a new species.
Yeah.
So, but you would never know. You would never essentially at that point. Does it matter? At that point,
that's what people will say is, does it matter? And the question is, the answer is, I don't know.
Okay, seasoned scientists don't know, but I get that it does. I get that it does, but it's like, I don't know if they're the same bee except under a microscope. I don't know. I don't know. I'm
Well,
being
and
like the devil's advocate, dumb, but
it's tricky because it's this. So, well, an example I give is I think there's three species of zebra in Africa, something like that. Around, let's just say there's
okay,
3 species of zebra. A zebra is about as big as a horse. So one of the zebras has thick stripes, and one of them has thin stripes. And so when you're looking at the zebras, you can tell the species because they're either thick stripes or thin stripes, right?
okay,
Now imagine if that zebra was a quarter of an inch long. How are
okay.
you going to tell if those are thick stripes or thin stripes? Because it's really small, especially if it's flying around on a flower. How are you going to tell which stripes it is?
Yeah.
But the difference is the bee with the seemingly insignificant differences in the amounts of punctures on its back might visit a different flower, or it might nest in a
Okay.
different habitat. But we don't know that until we know it's a different thing. If we think they're the same thing, we think, oh, this bee goes to multiple flowers. If we suddenly find out they're 2 different things, we might realize, oh, they don't go to 2 different flowers. They actually each go to 1 flower. So it's just understanding the interconnectedness of nature. And yes, if one bee goes extinct, it might have 0 effect on the ecosystem, but it
Okay.
might also be the one bee that did have an effect on the ecosystem. And so I feel like the safer bet is to say, let's just try our best to preserve a healthy natural ecosystem rather than us trying to decide which ones are expendable, because we don't know enough to be able to make that decision.
Right. Well, for sure. And to be fair, I wasn't saying they're expendable. Um,
But people, I
I
mean,
think
it's
also the
it's a question people might think about.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think the other difference is like those bees probably can't breed together. Those two little
No,
species.
and
That's a
that's the other
tiny
thing is,
little
yeah.
difference. But a zebra could, like those striped zebras, they could probably just interbreed, basically, right?
Probably not, actually. I
I
think
would
that's
think
why
so.
we would
No?
consider them different species. So there's lots of
Okay.
ways to define a species, but the general accepted way is that they cannot breed and make fertile offspring. So a donkey
Okay.
and a
All right.
horse can breed, but they can't make a fertile offspring. A mule is infertile. And so,
Right.
but
Right.
we the problem is we can't always tell with a bee. If you have 2 bees looking at them under the microscope, we can't make them mate and see if the baby's fertile. Uh,
Right.
it's the same problem with dinosaurs. We don't know if these dinosaurs were able to interbreed, so we have to use other kind of species detection methods and say, well, morphologically they looked different enough, or ecologically they lived in different habitats and they looked different enough. So
Okay. Great. What is this?
I don't know what that says.
Grandpa Grandpa Drohini? What is
Oh.
okay, what is that, TJ? This guy's big into bugs. I'm about to ask him to come on and do box elder bugs
Oh, nice.
and other bugs I hate. I want to do an episode about bugs I hate, and that's top five. Top
Bugs I
five.
hate. Box elder bugs.
I hate box elder
I bet
bugs.
maybe we should just Google that. Oh, hissing cockroaches.
Okay, there we go. Are they another one where they just don't interbreed? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I don't know anything
Or
about them
that they
except
breed
this.
like crazy? So he does a lot of roaches. It's a lot of roaches, which is totally a different thing. Seems most of them can hybridize and produce fertile offspring. Yeah, in between genera, that makes keeping roaches really hard.
Yeah, it's also tricky because what is a species? Is a species really is a fake thing that we made up as humans? We're just trying to
Okay,
categorize things and understand things, right? So it's easy to say, well, 2 different organisms are different species if they can't mate. But what if they can mate when they're together, but they rarely are together? Then are they still a species? And it's just our way of categorizing things. But evolution is a continuum. And so it's not that you're
yeah,
one species and then the next day you're 2 species. The process of
right,
speciation
right.
takes time, right? And so maybe these roaches are close relatives and they are in the process of speciation or whatever. So it's a complicated. The evolutionary tree is an interconnecting bush, and it gets complicated. But we as humans love to be able to categorize things, and so we try to understand nature by placing them into distinct categories.
Sure, 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 sure. Well, see, I don't do that. Everything is, very general for me. So
Hmm.
very, free. No, it's very frustrating to my guests. They always come in with, what do we call it? scientific names instead of Latin names. I've been corrected on Latin names. They're not. It's
They're
not a
not
thing.
always Latin, right?
Yep. No. Kind of hardly ever anymore.
We can
And
call them
everything is changing.
Latinized.
Do they Latinized would be good. I like that. Do you what are your thoughts? And is this in bees? Is this happening in bees too, where they're getting reclassified?
Oh
There's a
yeah,
lot of
all the
species
time.
getting reclassified.
So
Okay.
I have mixed feelings about this. So the science of systematics is classifying and understanding the relationships and the evolutionary history of things.
Okay.
Taxonomy and systematics go together. Taxonomy is naming them. My PhD was in a systematics lab. I studied velvet ants. We talked about velvet
Oh,
ants last time, did we? I can't remember.
we touched on it. We touched on it, but
Let's just
yeah,
touch on
let's
it
talk about
again
velvet
because
ants
I
with
have to
Russ.
toot my own horn
Yeah,
again. Another book, Velvet Ants of North America, just came out last month. So that's another one, good one. But so
I think Russ touted that book last time he was on.
I'm supposed to send him
Uh,
one, and I still have
talking
it
about it.
sitting here on my
Oh,
desk.
maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't.
But
Um,
but yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with systematics. It is important, I think. Yeah, same as self-promotion. That's what I do, right? So it's important for me to understand diversity, right? How things are
yeah.
different, how they're the same, and I think that's an important part of understanding the way the world works. And systematics is an important tool to be able to do that. And so when we obtain new information, whether that's a species we haven't seen before, or maybe it's new genetic information, it can help us better understand these relationships among organisms. Sometimes that leads to new names. The thing I don't like about systematics, though, is a part of our academic model that we have adopted around the world is scientists publish papers. Like that's what we do. We do studies and we publish
Okay.
papers. And so if
Sure.
you are a graduate student and you are studying systematics of, let's say, plants, you need to do some kind of a study about plants. And that usually means naming new species or combining species that you think are the same. So there's this kind of academic pressure to come up with studies, and that means you have to reorganize something. And so
Okay.
sometimes these reorganizations seem unnecessary to sometimes, to especially to non-academics, but even to
Yeah.
academics it seems unnecessary. So toads used to be in the genus Bufo.
Sure.
I don't remember how many that there are now, but I don't think the North American toads are still in the genus Bufo. They still look the
Of
same,
course.
and they're still related to the South American ones, which are maybe one of your viewers knows more about Bufo toads. But so the problem is that because of academic pressures, people will name and reclassify things, and then someone 10 years later will come back and look at the group again and say, well, actually, with this new data that we have, because now we can look at the genome, we're going to
Yeah.
reclassify it
Yeah.
again. So yeah, names are always changing. And in our books, some of the generic names we use have since been changed. And it's kind of frustrating, but it's the process of science, right? We are trying to
Yeah.
understand the relationships of things, and that's okay.
And we can work on the premise that our old information was wrong to start with. We just made assumptions to try to, probably educated assumptions, but to try to get it
Yeah,
into a box, like
exactly.
into a box where we could be like, okay, this is Bufo Bufo. And now you're
Yeah,
like, no, it's Bufo Ramble Schlambless. And
yeah,
that's, I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, and that's
That's why
what's
the
hard
names
is
are.
that you can't move forward with science without realizing that you don't have all the information. So you move forward as best as you can, and then later, and knowing someone will probably figure something else out about it later. So
Well, and I feel like a lot of the scientists I've talked to, like actual scientists, and then like we have some really serious citizen scientists in our
yeah,
community, in the ISO Buddies community. Um, but they're of the nature where they're not upset about being like their information being found to be old or initially wrong somehow or whatever.
yeah,
They're excited. They're generally excited, like, oh, that is cool. I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
new information. That's great. Um, and I love to see that. I want to see more of that in science
yeah.
and less of the people that are like, well,
Be
no,
less
actually, you're
defensive.
wrong. Yeah, a little less. I get it. It's not great to be like wrong, but you weren't. And most of the scientific discoveries, you weren't wrong. You just didn't know.
Yeah,
Ignorance is not the same. So,
yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, the classification question, it's been bugging me. Everybody I've talked to, it seems like in the last couple of years, it's been a big um, story, and it's frustrating to me because in the isopod community, it's the worst. Um,
Oh,
because we found out that shipping isopods, if you want to ship them and import them into the United States, and you don't know what they are, or you do, but you kind of just want them to come in,
yeah.
you just call them cubaris. You just label them cubaris, and they
Uh,
come in. And so there's a million species that aren't cubaris. We're finding out it was like all of a sudden there's 5,000 new cubaris species on the market, and I found out like 10 of those are cubaris.
hmm.
It's really weird. There you go. Menagerie said just toss it in cubaris. Um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Beetle Guy, Russ Wilson's brother is an actual scientist. Honestly, I don't really know what Russ does for real, but
Yeah, and I'm his
um,
cousin. I'm Russ's cousin.
oh, sorry, cousin. Sorry. I think it
I'll
said
claim it.
brother.
Yeah,
Okay,
his dad
close
is
enough.
my dad's brother, so that's close.
That's close. That's brother relationship. Were you guys close growing up at all?
Yeah,
Did you
our
get a lot of
families were.
family
Russ
time?
Russ is he's my oldest brother's age. Our families did a lot of stuff. Often we'd get together with cousins on Sunday afternoons or whatever. So yeah, we did a lot
Okay.
of running around the yard types of games
Okay. All
with the
right.
Russ's family.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you a bunch of Rust related questions at some point, like to get the dirt on Rust, but I don't think there is
He used
any
to he
dirt
used
on
to
Rust.
do I think he used to do karate, some martial art, and he never wore shoes. That's what I remember when he was little. When I was little, he was big. He was always older than me.
You know what's funny? I see him still probably not wearing shoes as often as possible. Like
Yeah, I
he just
wonder.
is that guy. So um it's so wild. That's so funny. Um yeah, I think you got all of my questions. I know we talked about the bees more than the plants today, but
That's great.
I like that we saw the interconnectedness of it and got into that more. And actually science. I hope you guys learned stuff. I learned stuff today. So, sorry, I'm getting all my notifications too to see. I'm waiting on I don't know why I'm waiting to hear from a new job at 9:30 p.m. on a
On a
Monday,
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
whatever it
I'm sure that their other computer like, hey, you're hired. I know it's 9:30, but
is.
um,
Well, I hope you get it.
thanks. It's like 2 minutes from my house. I could walk, and my current job is a 45-minute drive,
Oh, yeah, 2 minutes
which
is better.
I hate. Way better, way better. Um, yeah, Joe, thanks for coming on again.
Of course, it's fun.
I'm going to come up with some more topics where we can let me know what books you have and we can come and promote that book specifically. And Velvet Ants might be in the near future.
Yeah, velvet
Um,
ants are cool. They're like the coolest wasp in the world.
they are those little black and white ones. And then Russ has some that are look like just a cotton ball that runs
Yeah,
around.
this was Russ's specimen right here, and I took a picture of it.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's famous now.
Yeah,
That
Russ,
Velvet Ant is
Russ has a
famous.
cover photo specimen.
What's the longevity on most of the species? I know it's like probably varies a lot, but
No, it does vary.
um,
I've had some that lasted over a year in
okay.
captivity. I've collected some that looked like they were alive for over a year because they were mostly bald. Uh, Often
Okay.
I get them to last probably at 2 months on average. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Different species last differently in the lab, but several of them will last 6 months or more. I think Russ has had them more frequently. I mean, he has a better setup for his arthropods
Sure. Yeah.
than I do, but they're pretty easy to keep. I just put them in a little tank, and every day or two, I give them a little teeny piece of fruit. The rest feeds them beetle jelly. It works good.
Yep.
But I used to just cut a piece of grape in half, and
That's
they just
enough. That's
drink
plenty.
nectar. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, no, I think they're fascinating. I would love to have them, but I don't want to spend. They're exorbitantly priced and
Oh, yeah.
they're, wild sourced
Yeah.
and
That's
we
the
have no
problem. Well,
idea how long they're going to
that's what
live.
Menagerie just says. I wish I could breed them in captivity. I assume they're talking about velvet ants.
Yeah.
I would love to do that because there's a lot of actually studies that breeding them in captivity would help me understand some of the weird dynamics. So velvet ants form one of the biggest mimicry rings in the world. Me and my
Okay.
colleagues described it. But so there's one species that can have multiple different color patterns. But that's what would be fun to try to do breeding experiments. But they're parasitic. They parasitize ground nesting wasps and bees, and so I have not got them to do any parasitic like behaviors in the lab. There's one thesis from like the 1960s when someone says that they got them to, but it hasn't worked. I haven't spent that much time trying it. Where I'm at here at Utah State is a small little campus, and so I mostly teach is my main role here. I don't have a lot of spare time in the lab to try to get velvet ants to breed with each other.
I feel like that would be super intense projects. Like that'd be a lot of work. That's my assumption. I don't know, but it feels like that's intense. Because you've got to raise different types of wasps and bees as well to promote that breeding.
Yeah, well, at least have they parasitize them at the pupa or pre-pupal stage, so you have to have some pupal host.
Okay. So you've got to go find the pupal wasps or bees or breed them and then have them in the appropriate. Oh my God. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. So yeah, if you do, hopefully you do it before David Attenborough goes, so you can have him narrate the process.
I know, that'd be sweet, huh? There's a comment I wanted to bring up. Rod says that he worked, doesn't have a graduate degree, but worked for 30 years and is a better taxonomist than most PhDs, many PhDs. I totally agree with that. Working in a lab and actually working with the insect specimens is really what makes you a good taxonomist. Some of the best taxonomists I know don't have graduate degrees in taxonomy. They just spend the time in it. The problem is nobody really wants to pay you to be a taxonomist, even if you have a graduate degree. So that's
not something to go to school for.
No, it's sad. We really need them. Like bee taxonomists, we really, really need, but nobody needs them enough to want to pay them enough. I know a couple people actually that have started as freelance bee taxonomists. They don't have graduate degrees, but they're really good at it. So people will send them their bees and pay them to identify it. But it's a tricky line of work for sure.
Some wild, I have a guy. I'll be collecting ants this year to send specimens to, just to see. They want to do the taxonomy, but then see like distribution, if there's any new distribution. Which I think is exciting to be a part of, like that. So, and that's going to be all published on iNaturalist, I guess, because it's like pre-grad stuff. So that's a really cool project, though.
That's awesome.
I want business cards to say freelance bee taxonomist.
I know. You have to have a good logo for that business card too.
Just make them, Menagerie. I mean, who's going to stop you? Who's going to pass them out? What, 1 in 10,000 people is going to question it?
We should check and see if that Instagram handle is taken. Freelance bee taxonomist. A little bit long to type in there, but
Rod, go get it right now.
I'm typing it in right now. It's making me sign in.
See, will you sign in? It wants Rod to do it. Pun potential. But thanks a lot. And I knew we'd get off topic really far. So.
This was all on topic. I didn't see any distractions.
Perfect. Yes, the Velvet Ant brand was. I'll always take a Velvet Ant discussion, even though there isn't a whole lot to discuss. I mean, I guess there is, but there's for the layman, there's not, right?
Yeah.
Don't let them sting you. Have you taken a sting? Russ?
No, I never have. They have. I have done a study measuring the sting length, the stinger length, and they're the longest sting compared to their body out of any bee, wasp, or ant. But I've never let one sting me. I keep thinking maybe I will, but I just haven't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at avoiding stings.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to be. I wouldn't. There's those people that do it on purpose for the hits or whatever.
And so you have to mention those guys. The guy that's on YouTube, he overreacts. Like I do have friends that have been Brave Wilderness. Yeah. I have friends that have been stung by lots of those things, and either my friends are super tough, but really, like, let's be honest, those things hurt, but you don't need to roll around on the ground when you get stung by something. It doesn't help. And so anyway,
every reaction he has is the same. And here's what I don't get. Like if it hurts that bad, he can still get the thing under a cloche.
Yeah, totally.
So it doesn't get away. Like he always gets it under and he's like, and it's like either he's a pro, he is a professional, or it's not really. Like I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt. It probably hurts like hell, but
for sure.
Every sting, he's just under the table, like he's dying.
When I give like seminars to especially high school students, they all know who that is, and so he's done well for himself clearly. But
so Clint got stung by a bullet ant. Super anticlimactic. I don't know, man. I've heard that. I'll have to check out that video, Clint's Reptiles.
Yeah, I have to look at that too.
I'll have to look at that because He doesn't look super tough. I say a lot of great things about Clint. He doesn't look like he's super tough. He might be. He might be. You never know. But I talk a lot of trash about Clint on this show just because I love him now. I
Poor
didn't love
Clint.
him when I first found him, and now I absolutely adore Clint. His outtakes made him so human. Um, but yeah, see, I like that. I like that we got into the deal with the fake sting guys, the
Yeah,
overreaction.
see, not tangents. Bees can sting too. Last note, last myth to
Oh,
bust. Only honeybees die when they sting you. All the other 3,999 species in the U.S. can sting you multiple times. Their stinger doesn't come out when they sting you. There is a whole family
oh,
of bees in the U.S., including the fairy bees. Their stinger is too small actually to actually sting you. But yeah, only honeybees die when they sting you.
see, all right, see, I didn't know that either. I knew that bumblebees could sting you over and over if they chose
Yeah,
to. You must really, God must really hate you if you get stung like that from bumblebees.
yeah.
But
You got to hold on to them or something.
yeah, just, ow, ow,
Yeah,
ow.
exactly. That would be tough. Let's see Brave Wilderness do that.
Ooh, let's get him. I feel like a bumblebee sting would be significant. Like you,
Yeah, my son got stung by a bumblebee last summer when he was helping me collect, and he said it hurt pretty bad.
yeah. Like I mean, it's probably on par with a bee sting, but if they could just keep
Yeah.
doing it, like a wasp. I got a wasp under my shirt once.
Oh yeah.
Didn't know, and I don't like bugs on me uninvited. So I went to SWAT, and I got taught a lesson. It got me like 6 times before I got it
Ouch.
out from under my shirt. So yeah, it was not good, and that's a lot of soft skin under there.
Oh yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like
Oh,
yeah, it was
I
bad.
do. Not a lot of
It was
calluses
bad.
under shirt skin.
No, no, I do now. No scars. But Joe, thank you so much. I'm gonna try to
Yeah.
reach out more often.
I'll
You
try
don't
to
have to
answer
give
my
information.
emails better. How about that?
I'll just email you every day
Yeah,
just to
do
keep
it.
in touch. Well, but thank you so much,
You're
and
welcome.
have a good one. All right, and try not to get stung anymore,
I will do my best.
or keep that going. All right, thanks,
Awesome.
Joe.
Yep, thanks.
Guys, go get all of Joe's books. Joe and Oren. I just cost you thousands of dollars. Go get Joe's books and Oren's books. Joe's books look newer, so the information is probably a little more up to date. Um, and he's super personable. You saw that. So, guys, thanks for coming. I know we shot a little early, and that probably kept the audience down. You guys, this was awesome. Bumblebees are the most adorable creatures on the planet. I love bumblebees. Um, but yeah, thanks for coming. I hope you get to transform a little bit of your garden or yard or part of your garden into native plants. Let's promote these pollinators that we have locally. Check them out. Look online, see what you can find. Go to beesinyourbackyard.com. There's a lot of great information there, and that awesome children's book. But yeah, we also have our Patreon. That link is in the description. Like, subscribe, comment, you guys. Let's have some conversations. Um, also, I forgot to do it. Hold on, Joe's still here. Hold on.
I was
Joe,
waiting just in
something I wanted
case.
to. I know I want to start this with you, and I forgot. So bear with me. I got so much information, I got overloaded. So this is something I want to do every episode. Um, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I don't know. Flying.
Flying. All right, that was it. All right, thanks, Joe.
Okay.
So that was it, guys. We're gonna be asking that every week. So I love you guys. Have a great week. I'm cutting it short.